What's going on? How's everyone doing? This is Matt Thornsbury on Kuz's Corner, and we are doing Matt's Big 12 Blitz here on Kuz's Corner. It is a new show that we are doing here. It was supposed to be last week, but we had some things go wrong. And just to give you a quick rundown of what that's going to look like is from week to week. Obviously, it's called Matt's Big 12 Blitz. From week to week, we will be looking at the previous Big 12 games, the previous week, and then we'll be moving forward into tomorrow. Well, yeah, tomorrow's games. So previous games and then a look forward to next week's games. So, yeah, I'm your host, Matt Thornsbury, as I said already, and we're going to be going into last week's games. And of course, you know that we had some big time games to start off week one in the Big 12. Our West Virginia Mountaineers didn't do so hot, but you know, playing top 10 team in the country in Penn State, it wasn't too shocking of a result, but shocking performance nonetheless. Anyways, so we'll be going into the first game that we will be going into will be Colorado and North Dakota State. Now, the thing I want to say here is that I've always liked Coach Prime, and ever since he came to Colorado, I really liked Coach Prime. It's just, I think with everyone else in the country, they're kind of rubbing people wrong. And I'm not going to be too harsh on them here because North Dakota State is always a solid squad. They're always a good team. And, you know, I would never want to open the season against North Dakota State. I think that is just a very, very important and scary trick game to start the season out. If it's me, I don't think I'm doing that. So, but Colorado, they wanted to. They started the season against North Dakota State, and they pulled it out in pretty much the final minutes of that game. They pulled it out 31-26. Shedeur Sanders, doing what he left off doing from last year. He comes out 26 of 34, 445 yards and 4 touchdowns. That's solid opening, like I said, against North Dakota State. That's a solid opening. And his brother Travis coming out with 7 receptions and 132 yards. I don't believe that Colorado is going to be doing too hot this year in the Big 12. And, I think that's going to come to fruition here next week, tomorrow. They're not, of course, Nebraska isn't in the Big 12, but it's going to be a nice awakening, I believe, humbling, if you will, for Colorado. But I'm anxious to see how they answer all the noise. Everyone's been kind of curious how they're going to handle being in the Big 12 this year. And who knows? There's a lot of talk that they're not going to be able to handle the Big 12. There's a lot of talk that they're not going to win many games in the Big 12, and that could be true. I think a lot of people want them to be humbled, but like I said, that could happen tomorrow against Nebraska. But yeah, I think it was definitely an eye opener for Colorado. A good quick test game against North Dakota State. You're looking at one of the top squads. They win their championship all the time, and they provide very solid. Very solid. Let's check out some of the comments here real quick. And say, Matt said, let me go ahead and say, since BYU is about to kick off, I'm taking BYU in 10.5 and locking it up. All right, that's solid. That might be a pretty good bet there, Matt. BYU, I know for a lot of people, BYU is supposed to be significantly better this year. So that might be a solid bet, but I don't know. SMU always brings in a solid team, a pretty good squad. So I don't know. Steven said, please talk about WVU and Penn State game. I will be talking about the WVU and Penn State game. That won't be until a few ways down through here. But just give me some time here, and I'll hop on that game as soon as possible. I hate Coach Prime and I hate Colorado. I respect that two-way player, though. I really like him. Yeah, Travis Hunter is pretty, you got to give it to a player that can come into college and play both sides of the ball. I don't care who you play for. I don't care what conference you're in. If you can come into this level of play wherever and play both sides of the ball, you got it going on, especially playing it well. And Travis Hunter definitely came in and played both sides of the ball well. You just don't see that happen often at all. But I'm kind of in the same boat. I've always liked Coach Prime, but I kind of feel like he just started getting a little too much for me. But hey, in his words, he don't care. He does not care. But Nebraska, Matt said, but I like Matt Rule in Nebraska, and he has instilled his culture at Lincoln, and I got Nebraska covering versus Colorado at home. Yeah, I think Nebraska is hot. They are Nebraska is pissed to Dion made real rude. Oh, yeah. Nebraska, this is, I think they're going to come in ready to play Colorado. But we're going to get into that game later on. So, yeah, we'll get into that. I'm going to move on to the next game from last week. We were talking about, like I said, Colorado pulling it out against North Dakota State in their first year with the Big 12. So they start 1-0 overall. Of course, we haven't gotten into conference play yet, but they start 1-0 this year. Now we're going to move on to I spoke with Coos about this a couple weeks ago. TCU beat Stanford 34-27 this past week. And I was speaking to Coos a couple weeks ago. We were talking about TCU, and we were speaking about some of the teams that weren't really getting talked about too much this year. And I think that TCU is one of those teams that you can never really leave out of the top half of the Big 12, really out of the conference championship talk. TCU's always been solid. They've always been one of the teams that, given a lot of competition to those top squads, and really been one of the teams that has caused havoc in the conference, right? And so Matt says TCU almost gave that game away. All the penalties and drop passes, TCU looked like garbage. But if they play clean, they're a bowl team. Yeah, I said the same thing about TCU. They're always a bowl team. They're always a team that you have to look out for. It's not, they're never somebody that you can just look at on the schedule and be like, that's a lock. They never are. And it's like I told Coos a couple weeks ago when we were speaking about TCU. I circled this game. I said TCU and Stanford, that's going to be a big game. We'll get to see what TCU has, and we'll get to see what Stanford has. But, of course, we're speaking about the Big 12. And so I circled that, and I said if they can, get a win over Stanford there, I'm not too sure how good Stanford is this year, but I think that is a solid win to start the season over Stanford. And I've always liked TCU. I think if TCU's good, this is how I look at the Big 12. I think if you have a solid TCU team, if you have a solid Oklahoma State team, a solid Texas Tech team, like your original Big 12 teams, I always love when the Big 12 has those guys doing well. And we'll get into Texas Tech here in just a few minutes as well. But for TCU, this is what we're looking at for them. Hoover for TCU, 28 of 42, 353 yards and 3 touchdowns. The guy balled out. That's TCU's quarterback, of course. Anytime you're throwing over 300 yards, that's pretty solid. And, he had a better opening day than a lot of Big 12 quarterbacks that day. And, I mean, you gotta give it to him. I mean, his completion percentage is pretty good. 353 yards, though. That's a solid outing against Stanford. Got to be happy with it. And they will be moving forward 1-0 as well. So that's TCU and Stanford. Now moving forward, we're going to be talking about Oklahoma State and South Dakota State. South Dakota State is another one. They're along the same lines as North Dakota State. I mean, you can never look at those two teams right there, North Dakota or South Dakota State, and just say that's a lock. That's a scary opening game for the season for anybody. I mean, unless you're maybe Ohio State or Alabama, those top blue blood schools. You're looking at that game going, man, we better be ready to play. And Matt says TCU names their score this weekend. Yeah, probably. Who do they play? Let me see real quick. TCU. Oh, yeah. LIU. Yeah, they probably do, which is fortunate for them, right? Matt also said Oklahoma State looked really good. Their quarterback was solid money. He is a 7-year senior, and they have a great receiver depth. If he is on with that running game, OK State can shoot it out with anyone. Yeah. You look at Oklahoma State. I hadn't even moved on to talking about them. I was talking about South Dakota State. You look at Oklahoma State. Anytime you have a running back like Ollie Gordon on the squad, you're going to be a pretty good team. And it's crazy. You look back to last season when West Virginia played them. And, of course, the muffed punt was unfortunate, and that's kind of where things started to shift for the Mountaineers in that game. But also, Ollie Gordon was ready to put the team on his back, and he did just that and absolutely went off in that fourth quarter against West Virginia. And but he's doing that to everybody, right? And I don't see him slowing down anytime soon. He's going to continue to win Oklahoma State a lot of games. And San Diego State found that out as well. I mean, he had 27 attempts for 104 yards, but then he also caught the ball, which is what is one of his strengths as well. That's why you have to watch him in Oklahoma State. Is not only can he open it up in the run game, but he can come out of the backfield and catch passes and burn you there too, in which he did. He had 146 total yards for 3 touchdowns. But give it to Alan Bowman for being smart enough to hit him on the checkdowns, right? Alan Bowman came out of the game 25 to 34, 267 yards and 3 touchdowns. Alan Bowman's always been a solid quarterback for Oklahoma State. The thing with Alan Bowman that I like is he's a veteran guy, and you know that Gundy, he likes his veteran guys, and he's a pretty smart quarterback. I think he's been there for a while now, of course, and he's always been a pretty smart quarterback. He's always made good decisions. But when you pair that with a running back like Ollie Gordon, Gundy's got himself a squad, and hey, that's a solid win to open up the year against a good South Dakota State team, 44-20. Now, moving on, I wanted to talk about this game for one reason, and I'll pull it up right now. Hold on just a second. There. All right. Houston and UNLV. How many people seen this coming? I'm going to tell you right now. I seen it coming. I called it. And I told everyone to circle that one right there. Of course, Houston isn't that great this year. And so probably seen it coming. But I knew, Houston, they didn't really get things clicking with Dana Holgorsen, which, oh well. WVU fans probably look at that and laugh. But I liked Dana. Maybe he didn't leave in the best of terms, but, it is what it is. So Houston, things didn't get clicking with Dana, so he leaves. And they weren't really that great last year. And it was kind of the year that Dana needed something to happen, right? So fast forward to this season, And Houston's just not. They're kind of at the bottom right now, and they're clawing to get back up, right? And what a rough start for them against UNLV. But I knew it. I knew it a week and a half when I was looking at the schedules and I seen that Houston played UNLV. I was like, ooh, they might lose that game. And sure enough, Matt said he's seen it coming. I think UNLV has a shot at the playoff. UNLV has 2 All-Americans, believe it or not, on their team. UNLV has Kansas and Syracuse coming up. Yeah, so UNLV is, like I said, I circled it and I said UNLV is probably going to win that game. And shoot, man, if they can, I don't know if they'll beat Kansas, but I think it's going to be a good game. They'll probably beat Syracuse. But, hey, if they can mess around and beat Kansas, that would be a pretty solid start for UNLV. I think the big thing with switching it back here, I think the big thing with Houston, they had got to remember UNLV took Kansas to the wire in the bowl game. Yeah, you're right. And sure enough, looking forward now, them beating Houston to start the season, solid start for UNLV to start the season. I mean, you see that bowl game, and then you see you come forward and you see them play like that against Houston. You got to be happy as a UNLV fan. Houston. Matt said Houston might go 0-12 this year. You're probably right. It's very possible. They're looking a little bit rough. But here's the thing that kind of blew my mind for Houston is that they had a guy. They had Smith there at quarterback, and he's supposed to be a veteran guy. He's supposed to be somebody who can at least get them through the rough patch here. And he came in and threw 15 and 30, 50% for 135 yards and 2 interceptions. That's not going to get it done, especially in the Big 12, but also against UNLV. That's just not going to get it done. And they ended up, of course, that's going along the ticker at the bottom as well, is that they finally benched him and they put in their backup, who went 7 of 8 for 74 yards and a touchdown. So might not be a bad idea for Houston to continue going in that direction as the season moves forward. Matt said, I don't know who Houston's new head coach is, but Holmes leaves programs in dumpster fires when he leaves. That's for sure. Yeah. It's becoming a normal occurrence for Holmes, isn't it? But, for Houston moving forward, it wouldn't be a bad idea to maybe go another direction in the quarterback spot, especially since, their backup played pretty well, only throwing 1 incomplete pass. So, Houston's going to have a rough season ahead for Houston. I feel for them. Anyways, moving forward, we are going into, wow, this one blew my mind, guys. This one blew my mind. Now, Texas Tech taking the overtime against Abilene Christian. I don't know how good Abilene Christian is. We're talking about like 800 passing yards between the two teams here. And it's really wild because in my it was kind of like a Big 12 preseason preview of the conference. Me and Kuz were talking, and I told him that Texas Tech was one of the sleepers to maybe be at the top half of the conference. And now, I don't know how I feel about Texas Tech. That just blew my mind. They having big problems there against Abilene Christian. And if I remember, Abilene Christian outscored them 24-13 in the second half to send it to overtime. So Texas Tech's defense breaking down there in the second half. Mountaineer fans talking about the defense against a top 10 team. at least we're not Texas Tech and allowing 51 points to Abilene Christian. But, give it to Abilene Christian. I don't want to take anything away from Abilene Christian. Kudos to them for taking a Big 12 team to the wire. That is just fantastic. But Texas Tech pulls the win out. If you want to rewind to last year, it's like Matt said, Texas Tech is another team that can make a bowl game if they play decent. Yeah, Matt, I was about to say, if you rewind to last season, Oklahoma State, they started the season, who was it, against like South Alabama. They lost against South Alabama. And then they ended up, putting their season together and having a solid year last year. And so Texas Tech, it's first game of the season, get the jitters out, and turn your season around. And I mean, like I was about to say, they didn't even lose. So a win is a win. We'll see where they come out next game, how they perform next game, and then we'll go from there. Kind of the same thing with Colorado. Like, I don't want to be too, what's the word? I don't want to be too harsh. But again, it is Abilene Christian. And maybe Abilene Christian is taking a step up. We'll see where they're at. So I want to touch real quick on Texas Tech's quarterback. He is 30 of 42, 378 yards, almost 400 yards passing, and 5 touchdowns. Now, Cam Rising did that a couple weeks ago in their first game. 2 weeks ago, they had their first game. And I can't remember who they played first. If someone wants to throw that in there, I can't remember who it was against. It's kind of the same thing against a lower level team. I think he had 5 total touchdowns as well. But still impressive. Anytime that you can tally up 5 total touchdowns in a game is impressive. But then you also had Taj Brooks with 27 rushing attempts, 153 yards and a touchdown. So solid performances, but that defense needs to stiffen up for Texas Tech if they want to, make any noise in the Big 12. Colorado would beat Texas Tech if they lined it up tomorrow. Matt, my man, I think you are right. I think they would give Texas Tech the business, actually. All right, moving forward. Of course, we got to talk about it. As much as I don't want to, which I kind of do because I want to clear some stuff up about the way that I felt about the game. I want to talk about my prediction on the game that, of course, ended up being wrong. Nonetheless, without further ado, here we are. West Virginia and Penn State. A lot of hype coming into this game. A lot of hype. And a lot of angry fans after this one. And I'm going to tell you something. It's not that West Virginia lost that makes the fans angry. And I think that we all know this, right? It's not that they lost. It's in the fashion that they lost, and it's in the way that they performed that makes them angry. My prediction, if nobody had read my prediction, I had predicted that the Mountaineers would win 27-21, I believe it was. But I had a lot of faith in our defense. Well, I wouldn't say a lot of faith. I had a little more faith in our defense than what they ended up showing. And I had a lot more faith in our offense than what our offense showed. I was not ready for our offense to stall out the way that they did. That was a big shock to me. It's like I was saying a couple weeks ago, I was telling everyone, when you have the backfield that West Virginia has in Garrett Green and C.J. Donaldson and Jaheim White, I don't understand how you don't score points. And with the miscues that were happening on offense, I mean, you're looking at mistimed snaps. You're looking at it was sloppy. And Neil Brown said this. It was sloppy. And it just was not foreseen at all. especially in a group that we're looking at as they're supposed to be veteran guys, right? And I think that Garrett Green left a lot out on the field. He didn't play to the top of his potential at all. He didn't run as much as I expected him to run. I think if he scrambles a little more in that game, I think that we maybe score a little bit more. Maybe not a lot more. Maybe another touchdown and a field goal, maybe. But he seemed so fixated on passing the ball that I don't understand why. I'm thinking that, of course, there was a lot of talk in the preseason when he went to the Manning camp, and he did really well at the Manning camp. Everyone was talking about how well of a passer he had become, how he was the talk of the Manning camp. And I think that kind of has taken over a little bit in his mind. And I don't know. I'm not in his mind. I don't know. I can't speak for him. I don't want to put words there. I just want him to be good, and and he is good. I want him to kind of just be who he's always been. Don't allow yourself to overthink these things. Don't go into these games overthinking the games and thinking that you have to do more than what you are. And what he is he's a scrambler. He's a guy that makes plays with his feet, but being that he can make plays with his feet, as soon as that defense collapses on him scrambling, he can toss it right over their head. And he's always been good at that. And I just don't think that he was looking to do that against Penn State. He was just trying to be too much of a pocket passer and drop it in to all the guys, and which is fine. I'm not saying he can't do that. But Penn State was just smothering our D-backs. And I think that if he would have been a little more dynamic in that game and he would have went out and took what the Penn State defense was giving him on his feet, I think the game would have been a lot different. Now, on defense, it didn't matter. Penn State was getting anything and everything that they ever wanted on defense, right? And it's crazy to me. But at the same time, West Virginia, for some reason, the last, I want to say about 10 or 15 years has struggled with their secondary. I don't understand why we can't get a solid secondary. I feel like really Rasul Douglas was the last really good cornerback that West Virginia had. And you got to give it to, some of the guys played well on defense, though. I mean, you got guys like Josiah Trotter, who played a pretty, decent game. And it will go Appalachia Africa Twin said, I completely disagree. WVU is supposed to at least be competitive regardless of who we play. Maybe not win them all, but the team that showed up against Penn State wasn't prepared for the game at all. No. I agree. And that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying that we should have been competitive, a lot more competitive than what they were. It just, as I said in the beginning, it's not that WVU lost. It's just the fact that, oh, he's talking to you. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, it's unfortunate. Our secondary struggles, but we keep putting them in the NFL is what puzzles me. Yeah. Well, I mean, it doesn't go to say that these guys don't go on and develop and become decent cornerbacks and safeties, right? It's not to say that they don't do that. It's just for some reason while they're here or while they are in Morgantown, they just haven't been performing too well. And maybe it's the scheme, maybe it's the coaching. WVU doesn't have the talent. I'm sorry. Maybe compete, but that's what happens when our players run the. Yeah. I don't know. It would be nice if we could at least return to the level of being a team that other top teams are scared to play. You know, I don't even think we're at that level right now, and it's unfortunate. But nonetheless, I didn't go through the stats scrolling at the bottom here. Garrett Green coming out 15 to 28, 161 yards. He didn't throw an interception, but he also didn't have a touchdown. And then CJ, of course, getting those 12 rushing attempts in for 42 yards and a touchdown. GS or G Smyrna, is that how you say that? You have to have a pass rush. Absolutely. And I was just telling Kuz that earlier today. Our pass rush was non-existent against Penn State, which was completely shocking as well, because there had to be some point in the game where they got some kind of push, right? And it's even when we had the Stills brothers, this is what I come to. Even when we had the Stills brothers, they would have been in the backfield some point or another, right? And in this game, there was nobody anywhere in the backfield for our defensive line. I mean, they got manhandled. It didn't look like we had anyone in that interior D line that could move anybody against Penn State, which is kind of worrisome. Again, it was against a top 10 Penn State team, but I would have thought that they would have gotten back there at least a few times, and that just wasn't the case, unfortunately. But yeah, oh well. We'll move forward and we'll move on and try not to let this game get us down. You know, maybe it'll be a repeat of last season where we didn't perform well against Penn State, but we go on to play pretty good for the rest of the season. That's what I'm hoping for. Free Mountaineer said, I agree with you. The last two quality cornerbacks we've had are Rasul Douglas and Daryl Worley. Never mind the spelling. I'm speak texting while I'm driving. Yeah. Daryl Worley, he was solid, and Rasul Douglas was solid. Back in those days, I say those days, but you know what I'm saying. Dana's cornerbacks. I mean, we had several secondary guys that were pretty decent. Now that isn't to say though, in Gino and Stedman and Tavon's year, our secondary was terrible. And that was kind of going along the lines of, I don't understand why WVU just struggles to get top talent in the secondary. It blows my mind. We can get it on offense, but our secondary struggles. If anybody knows the reasoning for that, send it on over. All right. So that's all. That's the games I'm speaking of about last week. Again, it was some of the, close games. A lot of the games weren't that close, so I didn't really want to talk about them. But I wanted to speak about, again, Colorado getting the win over North Dakota State, 31-26. TCU getting their win over Stanford, 34-27. Oklahoma State pulling their win out, 44-20 against South Dakota State. Houston falling in their opener against UNLV, 27-7. Texas Tech pulling it out in overtime, barely, 52-51 over Abilene Christian. And then, of course, West Virginia falling to Penn State, 34-12. Moving on, we're going to move on to tomorrow's games. Tomorrow, we have some big-time games, and I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait to watch some of the games tomorrow. And the first one that we're going to speak on is Utah versus Baylor. Utah, of course, we know they're coming in this season as Colorado and several other teams as newcomers to the Big 12. And this will be, I would say, a pretty good test for Utah. Now, of course, Baylor isn't the team that they used to be. Baylor had I would say, about 6 or 7 years there that they were really good, and they stayed in the top half of the Big 12. And then they had that big scandal that happened, which, man, that hurt them big time. But then Matt Rule comes in, turns the football program around, and leaves like almost pretty quickly. Unfortunate for the Baylor, because now they're kind of in the same boat that West Virginia is in. I would say I would put them below below West Virginia, of course. But they're still Baylor. They're still a team that can win on any given Saturday, and that's why for Utah, this will be a good test for them, a good gauge for them in the Big 12. And now, Vegas has a 14.5 point difference here, which is probably fair. I think Cam Rising for Utah, he made his mark a couple weeks ago. I just mentioned it earlier. He made his mark. He had 5 total TDs in his opening game, or in Utah's opening game this year. And I think he's trying to make a statement. And this is another Saturday that he can make a good statement against Baylor. If he goes into this game and throws for another, 2 or 3 touchdowns and 300 yards, hey, look out for Utah. Of course, everyone knew that Utah was going to be coming in and possibly winning the conference. I don't know. I think, of course, they're going to have to compete with OK State, and I don't think OK State's going to let that happen. But we'll see. We'll see. Let's see. Fish Finder said Green couldn't scramble because of Penn State's defense. They forced him to throw. I kind of agree with that, but I am going to disagree. I think a scrambling quarterback finds open field. If you look at your top guys that have made it to the NFL, like Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes, the guys who are scrambling quarterbacks or could be scrambling quarterbacks, they find open ground. Now, of course, there were a lot of plays where he couldn't find it. Penn State's defense was back there too quick. So you're partly right. I'm not saying that I completely disagree with you. So yeah, Penn State is going to win a lot of games. I promise you that. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Our fans have Utah and how they talk, but I'm going to be honest with y'all. Utah walks the walk. They're good. Utah is going to pull away from Baylor in the second half and cover. Yeah. Utah is. I never thought that they were putting on a facade, if I want to put it that way. They are a team that is coming in this season ready to ball. They're not a team coming in hoping to compete in the Big 12. They are a team coming in ready to win the Big 12. And I think, we're going to see that every week out of Utah. And tomorrow will be the start of that. Don't be surprised, like Matt says, don't be surprised if they pull away in the second half by a pretty large margin. I'm thinking somewhere around the lines of Matt said Utah defense will have them in every game. Yeah, so I'm thinking something around the lines of like maybe 41-17 will be the final score against Utah and Baylor. So yeah, you're probably right on that. But number 11 Utah versus Baylor. You see at the bottom there, Utah 14.5 point favorites, and then the over/under is 55. Matt said 34-14. Great minds think alike. Yes, sir. That's a good prediction, Matt. Good prediction. All right, moving forward, we're going to Oklahoma State versus Arkansas. Oklahoma State, I said it a little bit earlier. I really like Oklahoma State. I like Matt. I like Mike Gundy. He's a great coach. And Oklahoma State is looking to finally win a conference championship. It's been a while, and I think Gundy wants it bad, and he's got the team to do it. And I picked Oklahoma State to win in one of my predictions. I predict Oklahoma State to win the Big 12. They have the team to do it. I think Alan Bowman and Ollie Gordon can lead this squad to the top of the Big 12. But as we were talking about Utah, they're going to have to compete with Utah. OK State has a good one in Stillwater Saturday. I'm thinking OK State wins, but doesn't cover. Arkansas coach job is on the line. Yeah, so my thing with this game is that it's in Stillwater, as you said, and for Arkansas to come into Stillwater, it's going to be hard for them to beat the Pokes in Stillwater. So Matt says, I think OK State wins by 6. OK State defense is suspect. I'm thinking 37-31. Yeah, Oklahoma State's defense is that's usually their weak spot. Is their defense. I think they usually always have a good offense, and they struggle on the defensive side. So yeah, and it's not like Arkansas is one of your top offensive teams. It's been a while since Arkansas has had that type of offense, and so I think you're right. I don't think Oklahoma State struggles in this game. I see it being a little more further of a margin than 37-31. I'm looking more along the lines of probably now Arkansas usually has a pretty decent defense, and so I would put it along the lines of maybe 34-20 maybe, or 34-24 is what I'm looking at. But nonetheless, I think Oklahoma State moves to 2-0 after this week, and yeah, I mean they're number 16. What was Utah? Utah's 11th. We have several Big 12 squads ranked, right? We have Oklahoma State ranked 16th, K-State ranked 17th. They play Tulane, by the way. I don't have that game lined up to speak about, but they play Tulane, and that's another game. I probably should have put that in the lineup because I had spoken about that game and how Tulane isn't. They're not quite a North Dakota State, but Tulane is a team that, and of course it's the second week too. But if they were playing Tulane in week 1, I would say look out for that game, K-State and Tulane. Now you could call me crazy, understand it. And K-State's pretty daggone good again this year. So they probably don't have to look out for Tulane. But look, it's like, yeah, K-State better watch out. They struggle versus mid-majors. Tulane is good. They got a good defense and a great freshman running back. That's right. Tulane is good. And I wish I would have put this in the lineup. I could have real quick here, but it's okay. K-State is solid. They're ranked, 17th? Yeah, they're ranked 17th. But here's the kicker. K-State is favored only by 8.5 against Tulane. I said it a couple of weeks ago, and I keep saying that, but I have. K-State better watch Tulane. I'm also going to say that they're lucky they didn't have to face Tulane in week 1. If they would have had to face Tulane in week 1, very, very possible they could have lost that game. Very possible. Matt says Marshall beat K-State a few years back, and K-State won the Big 12, and Tulane beat them 2 years ago. That's right. That's right. Tulane is a scary team to play early in the year, game 1 or 2. So, yeah, I'm right there with you. I am right there with you. But nonetheless, again, OK State versus Arkansas. Like I said, I'm thinking somewhere around the lines of 34-24, 34-20. Big game. Good game tomorrow. Let's move forward. I'm looking forward to this game big time. Of course, everyone loves this game. Iowa State at Iowa. Iowa State at number 21, Iowa. Iowa is only 3-point favorites in this game, and the over-under is 35. And what I will say about this game right off the bat is that as year in and year out, every season, you have to look Farmageddon. That's right, Farmageddon. You have to look at Iowa's defense. Iowa never really has a good offense. We all know this. But you got to look out for that defense. That defense wins them games, and that defense wins them games consistently. This isn't just like a, 1-year thing or 2-year thing. This is an every year thing. That defense is stout, and it is always there, ready for the taking to win the games. Now, Iowa State, Iowa State's always good. Matt said Iowa State lost their best tackler, a linebacker named Bacon. Iowa at home, and Iowa seems to have ISU number. I'm taking Iowa to cover by 4. Iowa 24-20. Solid prediction. It is in Iowa, but Matt Campbell and Iowa State are very, what's the word I'm looking for? They complement each other very well. I think Matt Campbell is doing a great job at Iowa State. I think they are always a team to be reckoned with every season. I don't care if they win 1 or 2 games or if they win 9 and 10 games. I don't care. They are always a solid team. And this game right here, you never know. You never know. Solid coaching staff and very scrappy. Very scrappy. But what I like about Iowa State is that Matt Campbell has them playing the right kind of ball. Matt Campbell has them playing very good, fundamentally sound football for the last few years now. And to be honest with you, I think Iowa State is going to go into Iowa, and I think they're going to take the win from them. I'm thinking along the same lines of what you got, 24-20. Maybe 2017 Iowa State is what I'm thinking. It's hard to bet against Iowa at home. It is. I can see why you would go with Iowa at home. Very solid pick. So I wouldn't say, switch your pick because of me, because Iowa's defense, man, they're like Yellow Jackets. One gets on you and it's just the whole squad's on you. So, it's a very easy pick to pick Iowa at Iowa. What is the big, I would say, decision maker for me is that Matt Campbell and staff, I think, wins this game. I think they take Iowa State in there. I think the Cyclones go into Iowa, and I think they win that game. And it would be an important game as well. I know for Iowa State, let me see here. Where are they at? Iowa State. I'm going to take a look at Iowa State's schedule real quick. So, yeah. Oh, man. Iowa State. So if Iowa State can get out of Iowa with a win, this is what their schedule looks like right here. Iowa State plays solid defense. They have a hell of a defense coordinator. I can't think of his name, but they like to stay mistake-free. Yeah. They like to stay mistake-free. That's what I was saying. They play very fundamentally good football. Iowa won 10 games last year with no offense. That's typical Iowa, though. They do that. Their defense, like I said, their defense wins them games. But what I want to point out here is if Iowa State gets out of Iowa with a win, they then have Arkansas State. Then they have Houston, Baylor. Then they play West Virginia. Then they play UCF, Texas Tech, Kansas, Cincinnati, Utah, and K-State. Now, if they beat Iowa, they're possibly looking at a 5-0 start if they can beat Iowa. Then they could go on to play Arkansas State, and should be a win. They should beat Houston, and they should beat Baylor. That should be a 5-0 start, which for us at West Virginia would be very scary because they would be coming into Morgantown 5-0, definitely ranked at that point, I would say. And that would be a scary look for West Virginia. Now, that would be a big-time game for us, and we would love to get out of Morgantown with a win over a ranked Iowa State team. But I'm telling you, circle this game right here. I'd love to see Iowa State win and bring their undefeated ranked team to Morgantown with all that pressure on them. I can't wait. Please let that happen. Brown has a shot to really raise his stock. Yes, circle that game circle this Iowa State and Iowa game. Circle it. Watch that game, and if Iowa State gets out of there with a win, I see them starting 5-0 for sure. Of course, if not, they would have to lose to Houston or Baylor, and I don't see that happening. It could, because it's the Big 12. It happens all the time. But, hey, that's what we're looking for right there. Iowa State winning this game, rolling into Morgantown 5-0. That's Iowa State at number 21, Iowa. Again, Iowa is 3-point favorites. The over-under is 35. Moving on, another big game of the week, and I can't wait for this one. I mentioned it at the start of the show, somewhere in the beginning of the show, and we're on it now. I'm ready to talk about it. Let's bring it on. 1-0 Colorado at 1-0 Nebraska. Who's got this game circled? I know a lot of people have this game circled. You better have this game circled, because I believe Matt Rule and the Cornhuskers are about to lay the smackdown on Colorado and Deion Sanders. Matt Rule, fantastic coach. We've already seen that, he can be successful in college. And, man, did he have Nebraska looking good in week 1, right? And I think, honestly, there's a mental part to this as well, because Colorado, he said, got to like Nebraska's freshman QB. They bought that kid with their NIL money, and all that talent is circled around him. Nebraska lost 6 games by less than 7 points last year. Yeah, and I talked about that last year. I went through their schedule, and I just couldn't believe the scores to all their games. Talking about a tough season, but it does really well for your mental state as a player to know that even though you lost those games, you're right there. You are right there. And now to this game, Colorado at Nebraska, I think there is a mental aspect here of Colorado struggled against North Dakota State. Now, again, North Dakota State's solid team. You're always going to have to look out for North Dakota State. But, they got to be feeling a little bit, I don't want to say scared, but nervous. They got to be feeling a little bit nervous heading into Nebraska. Now, if it was a home game, it'd be a little different. But they are heading into Nebraska to play Matt Rule's Cornhuskers, who Matt Rule always has a solid defense. And you best believe that Nebraska has a solid defense. Matt said Nebraska is going to play solid defense in the trenches where Colorado has the weakest spot on their team. Nebraska is built to beat at Colorado. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Like I said, Matt Rule always has a solid defense on his team. But that offense, when you have a freshman quarterback who can play that well and you have a defense to back him up, look out. And now, of course, it's going to be how well that Shedeur Sanders can handle the defensive pressure from Nebraska and Travis Hunter. Now, I think they will find holes, of course. He said, Matt Rule took Temple out of the cellar. If you can win at Temple, you can win anywhere. Hey, you got that right, which we thought the same thing about Neil Brown at Troy. But, yeah, Matt Rule, he proved it for sure, and he kept on proving it, and he still is. But I think that the Sanders brothers, of course, they'll take what's given to them. I think they will give them some sort of trouble for sure. I'm not taking any kind of thing, anything away from the Sanders brothers, nothing, because they are very good. They are very talented, and they know how to find holes in defenses. My point is, you're not going to find many holes in Matt Rule's defense. It's always a sound, very well played defense. And I think for Deion Sanders, this is going to be a tough one. And to be honest with you, I see Nebraska winning by more than 6. I'm thinking somewhere along the lines of I'm going to say probably 27-20 is what I'm thinking. 27-20 Nebraska wins over Colorado. And I think that's solid. And I'm giving Nebraska 27 points. I believe in that freshman quarterback. I believe in Matt Rule's offense for the Cornhuskers. Yeah, Matt said Deion Sanders doesn't know how to keep his mouth shut. That's his problem. Reminds me of someone we won't say. Yeah, I think it's tough for his team because he's kind of put it in all of their minds that they can do that week in and week out and be okay, which to a certain extent, I guess so. But, eventually you're going to run into it's kind of like the bully who talks at school. The bully keeps talking and keeps talking until one day that victim's going to pop him in the mouth and there's going to be no more talk. So I think Nebraska, what is the line? 8.5? No, it's Nebraska 6.5. And so I think Nebraska, I think it's going to be 27-20. Yeah. Good game, solid game. I hope you guys are ready for that one. I would circle that game as well. It's a big-time game. And, it went down more. Yeah, 6.5. Big-time game. Circle that one. Of course, I love watching Matt Rule football. All his teams play really well. And I think, any time you play at Nebraska, big time football. So we got that one. And finally, last but not least, we got to talk about it. We got to put it on here. Our West Virginia Mountaineers versus Albany. Not a big game, but I would say in our minds, it's an important game. What would we like to see come out of this game? What improvements would we like to see? How would we like to see Garrett Green perform? How would we like to see Neil Brown perform? What would we like to see him do different? And honestly, our backfield, right? What do we want to see CJ and Jaheim do? I mean, there are several aspects of this game that we have to see improve tomorrow. We have to see that secondary lock up and get better. We have to see our defensive line get some pressure. We're going to see them get better. There are just so many things after last week. This is a week 2 of redemption, kind of. Not quite yet, but a little bit of redemption for Neil Brown. He's lost the confidence of the fan base a lot after last week, and he's got to pull a little bit of that back this week. And so, there are several aspects of this team that we have to see significantly improved against Albany. And we're not talking about a bad team here. We're talking about an Albany team that is very solid. They're coming into this game 1-0, and hey, they're looking to the best news of this game is, Matt said the best news of this game is it came after losing to Penn State. Absolutely. When we lost at Pitt a couple years ago, we didn't have a shot to get back on track and never got back on track all year. Kansas got us. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Unfortunately for Albany, this game is coming right off the back of losing to Penn State. So our team is ready, I hope, to prove that they are much better than what they showed last week. And in that aspect, we have to see them put up some numbers. And I'm not just meaning, 40 points, 50 points. I'm meaning we got to see some sacks. We got to see some yards, some rushing yards. I mean, chunks of yards. We got to see receivers catch the ball. There are several aspects where we have to see numbers go up. We can't just see points on the board, which those things are going to translate to points on the board. So it makes sense, but just so many things. I would like to see our defensive line get a lot more pressure, with somebody said it earlier, you have to get pressure on the quarterback, and that's absolutely true. I mean, you can't have a quarterback sit back there for 10 seconds until he finally finds a receiver. Any quarterback, you could put any quarterback in the backfield, and if you give him 10 seconds, he's going to find a receiver. Matt said we need to create depth. We need to see both freshman running backs, and we need to see Nico and the BYU transfer. Yes, I agree. This is a very key game in that we can see who we haven't seen. And, there has to be some kind of level here or some kind of bridge that would give us trust in some more guys here, because we're to a point where now we're not sure about, the veteran guys. We're not sure about guys who played last season. We're very suspect. And so it would be a nice week to where we can create some space and put in these guys that would be like, okay, if this guy goes down, we would feel okay about another guy going in. CK90. Chris said getting an actual touchdown would be nice. Yeah, you got that right. And that's what I'm saying. I mean, if we can translate Jaheim White and CJ Donaldson getting some chunks of yardage, Garrett Green getting out of the pocket and making some plays or making some throws, some good throws, all of that will translate into some touchdowns that I'm hoping for. Matt said, well, the good news is Albany isn't Penn State. Yeah, exactly. So my prediction for this game, it's already been put out. I predicted this game to be 42-17 just because I'm a little bit suspect on our defense now. It worries me for the rest of the season mostly, but man, I hope that our secondary comes out and they're able to lock up a lot more than what they did last, especially against Albany. Give me some confidence this week. That's what I'm looking for. Give me some confidence this week, and I'll feel okay. But like I said, I predicted this game 42-17. I still think we give up 17 points until they prove to me that, they can play defense. They can get some stops. I think it's going to be 42-17. It's in Morgantown. We always love Mountaineer football, so we gotta be behind there. I think we really got a bad taste in our mouth. And I thought about this, and I think Brown runs it up on Albany 61-14. Maybe. I don't see Neil Brown as being that kind of coach, to be honest with you. Maybe, though. Maybe. He might be out to – I think our defense and special teams both scored. I think he might be to a point of proving grounds of being like, okay, let me show the fans that we can score the ball, even if it is against Albany. I think this is the big thing for me. If he goes out and he is able to show that backups can score against Albany, I will feel okay. And that the backups that we have can get some defensive stops. That I think that would look really good for this week as well. That's what he needs to do this week is get into enough space here, look good for a few quarters, 2 or 3 quarters, look good defensively, look good offensively, and then be able to put in your backups on both sides of the ball and have them look good as well. I think that would not only would you come away with the win against Albany, but you would come away with a win over the fans as well in some aspects is what I mean. So, yeah. Nonetheless, that wraps it up, guys. That was the last game, West Virginia and Albany. Of course, we're all going to tune into that one. We're all ready for that one. And if you would, for us, guys, go ahead and press the like button for us. We would greatly, greatly appreciate that. Especially this is my first show here on Kuz's Corner, Matt's Big 12 Blitz. I appreciate all you guys tuning in. It's really cool to see you guys tune in and comment. Matt, Chris, a couple of other people that I didn't get there. I appreciate you guys coming in here, tossing in some comments. Toss all the comments that you want in. Toss some questions in there. Anything. We'll try to get through them as the show goes on. I hope you guys continue to tune in. Tune in next week. I will be doing these every Friday. And we'll be talking about some Big 12 football. Football season's back, baby. Woo! So thank you guys. Thank you so much. We will see you next week, next Friday at 7 o'clock.